Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Max Story.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. So today I'm going to talk to you about those people who are struggling to get their frontline leaders to lead well. This could be any leader at any level above the frontline leader. Frontline leader could mean a team leader out there working with the crew or working with the team. Or for some companies, they don't have a team leader actually in there working, a working leader. They'll have a frontline supervisor or whatever title they give them. But that's what I want to talk to you about. Those folks who are struggling to get your frontline leaders to lead well. And again, usually the person doing the struggling is some leader at a higher level above the entry level leaders. So if you can relate to this, don't let this be you. That's my message for you. Don't let this be you. And if you're curious, maybe you're a frontline entry level worker. Don't turn off this podcast because I'm gonna share with you what's really going on. If you're a leader, which is a frontline leader, isn't leading well, what's the problem? I'll help you see that. One day you may be that leader. If not, you're still having to interact with that leader, and you need to know what's going on up above because there's a lot going on up above. So the episode that we're doing today, I'm actually basing it on a newsletter I wrote on my LinkedIn profile. I got a newsletter that comes out. Currently, it's every other week. That could change. Used to be every week, but now it's every other week. But this original newsletter came out July 1st, 2025, and the title of it is Struggling to Get Your Frontline Leaders to Lead Well, with a question mark at the end. And it's got a picture of a guy with holding his glasses in his hand and rubbing his eyes. And it's got the words, "Can you relate?" question mark. Don't let this be you. Kind of like what I said a minute ago, but that's actually the cover image for that newsletter in case you were to go looking for it, because I'm going to be reading some of it, adding some to what's in the newsletter. But if you want a clear and concise written version of what I'm going to share with you today, it'll miss some of the stuff I add, obviously, but you can go there and look for that newsletter and dive into it. But before I actually dive into it, I just want to share with you, I'm recording this on Monday, August the 18th, and we're getting ready. A little less than a month away, we'll be heading up to Chicago to speak at the Fab Tech conference in Chicago. And this is a massive conference. If you're in the metal business, sheet metal, any kind of metal fabrication, and you don't know about Fab Tech, you need to check them out. And you just go to fabtechexpo.com, fabtechexpo.com. And every year they host these large events. Rhea and I have spoken at them at least 4 times that I can remember. I know we've spoken in Chicago previously, at Atlanta, Orlando. Seems like maybe somewhere else once or twice. I can't remember. As the years pass, we speak a lot of places, can't really keep up with it. But I know that's where we'll be this year. The conference actually takes place September 8th through the 11th in Chicago at the McCormick Place down by the lake. Really cool place. And I think in Orlando last year, if I remember right, they advertised they had like 60,000 attendees, if I'm not mistaken. There's a lot of people. There's like 400 something speakers, multi-day event. They got an expo hall that's got every single thing you can imagine. It's just wicked to go walk through. It's interesting. It is massive. I mean, they only hold these Fab Tech conferences at massive conference centers in big cities. So they're limited to the places they can go. But that expo is, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of square feet are in there, but it's a lot. It's got every single thing you can imagine. It's got robots, all kind of tools, safety stuff, latest and greatest technology. We'll actually be doing a podcast episode. We were invited to be part of the Making Sparks podcast. They'll record it live somewhere out there in the expo room. They'll have a studio set up, and we're going to go join them. They reached out and asked us to do that, so that'll be cool. We're going to actually be speaking on September the 9th and 10th. On the 9th, we're speaking from 1:15 to 2:15 as part of the Emerging Leaders Program. It's 35-year-olds and under who are, have a desire to grow and become leaders, or maybe they already are, but they just want to continue to climb up that leadership mountain. We'll be talking about traits of high-impact leaders as part of that special afternoon in the Emerging Leaders Program. Then the next morning on September 10th, we'll be speaking from 8:30 to 9:30 to whoever shows up at our room. Again, it's a big conference. We'll be speaking on unleashing your team's potential. We'll be talking about actual leading other people. Sometimes we have usually between 50 and 100 folks show up for those things. So that's pretty cool. We have no idea about the Emerging Leaders program, but we're excited to be asked to do that. There's only, I think, 4 different speakers speaking at that. So for us to be requested to be one of the speakers, that's pretty cool. So it's a privilege and a pleasure to do that. And I'm sure we'll meet a lot of great up and coming leaders there and meet some good people. People come from all around the world to this conference. So again, go to fabtechexpo.com. Even if you can't go check it out. There's probably some stuff you can learn or watch or no telling what, you might get a nugget just by viewing their website. And it may come to a city near you. Chicago may be too far. I know they go to the West Coast, they go to Florida, they go to the East Coast, then they go up north. They bounce around from year to year. And I think they do some other smaller events, possibly. They got a lot going on, but we usually speak at this big one. I also want to share with you, and I'll mention it as I go through this episode with you. I'll refer you to it. But if you hadn't checked out the bluecollarleadership.com website lately, Rhea and I have been working hard to upgrade that thing, redo it, if you want to call it that, make it more user-friendly, where you can actually find things. We also added a self-guided section. So when you go to the main page, you'll see at the top there's 2 buttons in the banner. There's one that if you want us to come speak at a conference or an association event or something like that, click on that button, follow that trail. Or there's one about training, which features on-site training, virtual training, or self-guided training, meaning you just want to develop yourself or you want to develop your team. So that's another button you can click on and follow that trail. So a lot of you that listen to the podcast may have an interest in going to looking at our self-guided page. So that's just go to bluecollarleadership.com, click on that training button, and just follow it down till you get to the self-guided. It'll be pretty self-explanatory, but go to the self-guided, do-it-yourself page, and then look around it. Click on it. There's multiple things you can click on and learn more about in that section for those who want to develop themselves. Anyway, enough about all that. Let's get into today's lesson. And the first thing I want to share with you is my intent is in this podcast episode is not to bash leaders at any level in any way. And it may sound like I am, but that's not my intention. If you know me, I ain't into leader bashing. I don't bash anybody. I try to help poor leaders and ineffective individuals climb to the next level and beyond. And I do that with a lot of straight talk, but my intention is not to bash leaders. But I'm going to be talking about the leaders. I'm going to be calling them out, and I'm going to be holding them responsible and accountable. So if you're not a high impact individual yourself, it may sound like bashing, but my intent's not to bash. My intent is to help leaders and those who report to them elevate their awareness by provoking some thoughts they may not have had in the past in an effort to motivate and inspire leaders to lead at a higher level so they and their teams can live a better life in general, but also so they can perform at a higher level within the organization. So remember, not here to bash leaders. I'm going to give you some straight talk. Some of those sensitive, insecure leaders, that they don't feel like they're getting their toes stepped on. And see, what I just did, for some people, that sound like I'm bashing the leaders. No, I ain't bashing the leaders. I'm just giving you some straight talk. There's some insecure leaders out there that don't like straight talk. They like to be in control. They like to dodge responsibility. They like all that stuff. Just calling them out for who they are and for the character that they display is not bashing them. I want to give you kind of the compare and contrast what a high impact leader looks like, what a low impact leader looks like. That's not bashing leaders. That's helping you understand what you're seeing in the world. And if you humble, you look in the mirror and say, which one am I? Which traits do I have? More traits of a high impact leader, or do I have more traits of a low impact leader? And if you see you got some traits that low impact leaders have, you need to move beyond those traits. And that's what all of my books and all of my content is to help you do. Help those people who want to climb to a higher level to do so. So I want to share a quote as we get going here into this lesson from Gino Wickman. I read a book called Traction by Gino, and it's a real good book. It's really about managing the business, not really about leading the people. It's got a little leadership in there, but actually to do what Gino's talking about in that book, and I think it's a phenomenal book. Every owner of an organization or top level leader ought to read that book and expose themselves to what he's teaching in there. But to do what he's teaching, you gotta have a good high degree of leadership at the top and throughout the org chart. So I want to share a quote from him that I actually got from that book. Most leaders spend most of their time overwhelmed, tired, and buried in the day-to-day routine, unable to see beyond tomorrow. As a result, they don't solve problems as well as they could. They don't lead their people as well as they could. And they're not a good example for them. Pretty powerful quote right there to open up this lesson. And again, you can find this lesson on my LinkedIn profile. You go to linkedin.com/in/Max Story, and you'll be there. Or just go to LinkedIn and search for my name. You'll find it. Go back and look for the newsletter released on July 1st. So Rhea and I travel all over the country. We hear this a lot. Sometimes we hear it in person. Other times people call us. Leaders call us up. And this is what they say, whether we're in person or on the phone. I need help getting the frontline leaders to lead. I hear that so much from people who call me up wanting support. This is by far the most common request I receive is help me get my frontline leaders to lead. I need some help. I get it all the time. The request usually comes from the top leader or the business owner. Sometimes from the upper or mid-level leaders, sometimes from the HR leader, and occasionally from an on-site learning and development professional who has a position. Some of the bigger companies, they have people who their whole job is learning and development, meaning they teaching and training all the people who work in the organization. Some big organizations, I mean, they have multiple people, multiple departments doing that because they leading on purpose. But whoever it is that calls me, they're frustrated or reporting to someone who is frustrated, excuse me. They may be frustrating too. And they're looking for someone who can help them solve their problem. And again, their problem, how do I get the frontline leaders to be better leaders? And remember, I ain't bashing these folks. I want them to call me. If you got a problem with your frontline leaders, I want you to call me. If not me, call somebody else. You need some help. You want to understand what I'm talking about as I get through this. And if you got enough humility to get through it and not blame me for your problems, I can help you. If you read the article, or if you get in, listen to this podcast and you choose to be offended, see, no one can offend you without your permission. So if you think it sounds like Max bashing me, I ain't bashing you, but if that's the way you see it, that's the way you're going to perceive it, and you're going to respond accordingly. I'm trying to help you. But make sure to get all that fog off the mirror so you can see clear. That's what I do. Some people don't like it. That's all right. They ain't going to like anybody who does it. And until they can get over themselves, they ain't going to get the lessons that they need. Somebody's got to help them say, you ain't seeing clear. So how do I get the frontline leaders to be better leaders? These folks asking that question, they're looking for someone who can teach their leaders how to lead. Common sense. That makes sense, right? That's a good thing. That's exactly what they need. They need someone who can teach their leaders how to lead. But the problem they think they have is not their problem, which means they have a different problem. A problem that they're not asking about when they call me or talk to me. But it is absolutely the problem we need to be talking about if they truly want to solve the problem they think they have. See, I got to help them figure out what the real problem is. They mistakenly believe the root cause of their problem rests with the leaders on the front lines. That's absolutely not true. The frontline leaders should definitely be taking responsibility and holding themselves accountable. If you know me, I teach that to everybody. The frontline entry-level worker, the frontline leader, frontline supervision, management, mid-management, upper-level leaders, top-level leaders. I teach that to everybody. That's not the whole point of this. The whole point is what's the root cause. Ultimately, if you're talking about the leaders, it's got to be above the problem. But relative to organizational culture, the root cause of what's happening with the leaders on the front lines will always be found with the leaders above them. And most likely, the leaders above them. And ultimately, the root cause of what is or isn't happening on the front lines can be traced back to something the top leader is or isn't doing, is or isn't expecting, is or isn't allowing. A few examples of what I mean to help clear this up. So what the top leader is or isn't doing. Let's talk about that. Again, what I'm about to talk about, the top leader is or isn't doing. That's a root cause of what's going on the front lines. The top leader is hoping everyone at every level will somehow just figure out how to lead at a higher level on their own. In other words, whatever that means to each individual, who knows? Or the top leader isn't supporting, funding, and implementing a continuous and consistent formal leadership development program throughout the organization that includes all formal authority leaders, all support personnel at all levels, and all of the frontline workforce. As if somehow all leaders at all levels will naturally align themselves with the appropriate high-impact, character-based principles that all high-performance teams are built upon, and then start developing themselves and their teams. See how it works? So now we just talked about what the top leader is or isn't doing. That could be the root cause. Let's talk about what the top leader is or isn't expecting. The top leader is expecting leaders that have received little or no leadership development to lead well simply because they've been hired into or promoted into a leadership position. As if being in a leadership position is what makes someone an effective leader. Or the top leader isn't expecting leaders at every level to be responsible for the personal and leadership development of those who report to them. As if personal and leadership development of their team members isn't a leader's responsibility. See how this is working? See how the way the top leader thinks and views things relative to leadership development impacts the organization all the way down to the frontline leaders, which impact the results of the frontline team. Let's talk about that third thing I mentioned to you. what the top leader is or isn't allowing. The top leader is allowing leaders at every level to be disengaged when it comes to personal and leadership development of themselves and their team members, which communicates loud and clear to everyone that personal and leadership development is optional within this organization. The top leader isn't allowing time for personal and leadership development to take place because it truly isn't a priority, as if demonstrating to everyone that personal and leadership development isn't a priority within the organization will somehow communicate that it is. See how this stuff doesn't make sense? These things that the top leader is or isn't expecting, is or isn't doing, is or isn't allowing. It's plain and simple when you start thinking about it the way I'm sharing it with you. High impact leaders understand responsibility for what is or isn't happening in any organization ultimately lies with the top leader. But most, if not all, of the blame lands on the men and women filling the frontline leadership positions who are simply doing their best to make things happen in spite of the lack of leadership ability of those above them. Wow. I'm giving you some leadership truth today. Kind of like a surgeon's scalpel. It might sting, it might hurt, but it's meant to help. If you got enough humility as a leader, especially if you're a top leader, to be still listening, I'm proud of you. If it's stinging and burning and hurting a little, I hope you keep listening because you need to hear it. But these frontline leaders should be rewarded instead of ridiculed because they show up every day and attempt to carry out their mission in spite of what is or isn't happening above. And in my article on LinkedIn, I'm just looking at it as I'm doing this podcast. I'm reading some of it and I'm adding some to it. But if you follow me on social media, you know a lot of times I share quotes and I put them in the form of some kind of picture. I've got one of those actually embedded into this newsletter. And it's got a little sign with 4 arrows pointing in all different directions. One of the arrows kind of look like street sign, but it's not street signs, right? It kind of looks meant to look like it. All these arrows pointing in different directions. One says his fault. Another one says her fault. Another one says their fault. Another one says not me. That little sign right there, that little image I just painted for you, mental image, that's what it looks like up and down the org chart a lot in organizations. That's why there's so much chaos in there. That's the way leaders who don't lead themselves well, that's how they live. It's somebody else's fault. So I got a quote here from you from Jocko Willink and Leif Babin or Babin. I'm not sure how to say his last name. Jocko was former Navy SEAL commander and Leif was on his team at some level. But they say this in their book, Extreme Ownership. Leaders must own everything in their world. There is no one else to blame. That's what high impact leaders do right there. They own everything in their world. That's what I'm inviting you to do right here. And in the newsletter I mentioned, check out my book, 10 Values of High Impact Leaders, if you haven't. If you want to start learning to lead and think at a higher level so you can motivate and inspire your team to perform at the next level, you got to start developing yourself. Maybe you already are looking for another resource. Check out 10 Values of High Impact Leaders. And you can go to bluecollarleadership.com/10 values and learn a little bit about that book there and see an excerpt, that sort of thing. It's available on Amazon, audio book, ebook, that sort of stuff. So leaders should stop blaming and start looking in the mirror. Myron Golden says this: blame is the most popular excuse. And he's 100% accurate with that. When the frontline workers aren't performing, higher level leaders at all levels are often quick to blame those who are leading them directly, the frontline leaders. Yes, the same frontline leaders who most often haven't received any formal leadership training. Yes, the same frontline leaders who are in the trenches doing battle every day with their team trying to accomplish the mission. Yes, the same frontline leaders who are blamed endlessly when their team doesn't perform. And yes, the same frontline leaders who are often overworked, underappreciated, and underpaid, stressed, and frustrated due to a lack of support from above. And let me say again how I opened that. When the frontline workers aren't performing, higher level leaders at all levels, up and down the org chart, are often quick to blame those who are leading them directly. Those frontline leaders I just described. Yes, the frontline leaders are blamed for not performing well as leaders. But most have never received any formal leadership development from the leaders above, much less been involved in the type of consistent, continuous, never-ending leadership program that builds high-impact leaders who are capable of building and leading high-performance teams. Do those frontline leaders deserve all the blame? Isn't it interesting that when there's a problem with the job performance of those reporting to frontline leaders, blame is quickly directed at those frontline leaders for not leading their team well? Okay, I agree. If that's the case, they most likely aren't leading their team very well. But wait a minute. If responsibility for the performance of those below is found with the leaders directly above, in that case, the frontline workforce is having a performance issue. So the responsibility, the blame, is being placed directly above. And the frontline leaders aren't leading their teams well. I just got a simple question. Why is it the leader above them seen as responsible? Just as the frontline leaders are seen as responsible for the frontline workers. See how that works? What's happening, the responsibility for what's happening below is found above. Not just on the front lines, at every level. That's a principle. And if the leader above isn't leading well, that's obvious, by the way, if the leader below isn't leading well. See how this works? Why isn't the next level leader above being held responsible? Are you with me? It ain't that hard, folks. It ain't that hard to understand. It's plenty hard to look in the mirror and take responsibility. But those with a mouthful of pride and ego will find it hard to swallow the truth. I'm telling you, you find a leader with a mouth full of pride and ego, they don't want none of this truth I'm sharing. So I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you sharing this podcast on your social media or telling your friends or leaders or somebody somewhere about it so they can come get them a dose of truth. Tell them about episode 466. Say, you need to go check that one out. Everything that I teach about, write about, talk about is to support this episode right here, to do something about this episode right here. So if you want to help me, share it, tell people about it. If you're a formal authority leader, get your leadership team in there, play it, pause it, and talk about it. That's leadership right there. You can do that with any of my podcast episodes. It won't cost you nothing, but you got to lead. Most often, there are far too many leaders on the org chart who are looking down, casting blame, instead looking in the mirror and taking responsibility. You already know that. You can validate that yourself. What you need to know is I know it too. I'm with you. When there's a lack of performance or engagement on the front lines, all the blame and responsibility seems to roll down the org chart. Just seems to. Always seems to roll down the org chart from one leader to the next, being passed from each leader who should be responsible to the lower level leader they want to blame and try to make responsible until it lands at the feet of the frontline leader. Then you got the entire leadership chain of command up above, casting blame down on that frontline leader. Think about it. All the responsibility for what's going wrong on the front lines rolls down the org chart to the leader with the least authority to do something about the root cause, which lies above, which is ineffective leadership throughout the org chart. It's obvious. There is a leadership problem at many levels. When there's a problem on the front lines, there's a leadership problem at many levels. When there's a quality problem on the front lines, there's a leadership problem at many levels. When there's a safety problem on the front lines, there's a leadership problem above at many levels. When there's a performance problem on the front lines, there's a leadership problem above at many levels. See how that works? It's simple. Simple to understand if you understand about what I call high impact leadership. So I got a quote here from John C. Maxwell, and it's just so fitting. And again, I've got an image of it in the LinkedIn newsletter. And this is what he had to say. I dropped it in right here. It isn't the incompetent that destroy an organization. The incompetent never get in a position to destroy it. It's those that have achieved something and want to rest upon their achievements who are forever clogging things up. Ain't that the truth? That ain't nothing but leadership truth. So underneath this image in the newsletter, I share another resource, and I ask a question: do you desire to be a more effective leader? Do you truly want to be a leader worth following is what I'm asking. If so, I got another resource for you, and I share it right here in the newsletter, so I'm going to share it here in the podcast as well. And you may be familiar with it, you may not. But it's based on my book, or I'm sharing information about my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Supervision: Unleash Your Team's Potential. It's full of the first 15 chapters kind of focus on you. How do you lead yourself in a way that a high impact leader should lead themselves if they want to be a high impact leader worth following? That's kind of the first half of the book. First 15 chapters. Second 15 chapters is really, how do I lead others effectively? Once I become that leader, now how do I literally lead others effectively at a high level? So that high impact individuals, high impact team players, people that I've developed or that are naturally that way, actually want to follow me, because high impact individuals and high impact team players, they expect a lot out of their leader. They expect a lot more than the stuff I've been talking about in this episode. They actually ain't going to stay around very long if they got a leader casting blame, because they got options. High impact people have options. One of them is fire the boss, find a better boss. But if you want to dive into this content or just explore it, I can send you straight to our web page where you can actually preview the first 5 chapters and see an entire outline of this book. You can watch a 9-minute or so excerpt, highlights, so to speak, from our 7.5-hour online video course that's based on this content. And you can just kind of read about the book itself, the content. What's the purpose of it? You go to bluecollarleadership.com/leaders, LEADERS. If you want to go straight to the online video course, highly recommend that. Go to bluecollarleadershipacademy.com, and you'll see we got actually 7 courses there. So one of them is Blue Collar Leadership and Supervision: Unleash Your Team's Potential. And if you're a leader, a formal authority leader, you got leaders reporting to you, you might want to have them all go through that course. It's $199 per person for this 7.5-hour course. Or basically for $1,000, $999, you can enroll up to 200 people for a 1 month. That's a really, really good deal. Super deal. You can enroll up to 200 people into all of our 7 courses, 7.5-hour courses, for $1,999, basically $2,000. You can enroll up to 200 people for a month, and they can go through 7 courses. Probably actually can't do it that quick, right? But you can stay subscribed after 30 days, pay that $19.99 again, keep them going. I've had some clients who just want to enroll, stay enrolled, and then even use some of our content for onboarding when they bring in new employees before they actually go out and join the workforce or the leadership team or the support team. They actually have to go through at least one of these courses, sometimes multiple courses over time. It becomes a requirement. So basically, for around $24,000, you can have a turnkey online virtual video leadership course, and you actually can track. If you go the full blown route, you'll have a dashboard where you can track and see everyone's progress. Anyway, enough about that. You go there to the bluecollarleadershipacademy.com, learn all about that. Reach out to me or Ria. We can talk to you about that. I'm just sharing it with you now to let you know it's an option. But I got free stuff, podcasts, newsletters, all that sort of stuff. And then some people pay us to speak, come on site, sometimes for multiple days. And that costs a whole lot more than free. But you get a lot different impact on your folks because we're there in the room to motivate and inspire people to climb to the next level and beyond, to become engaged in the process and build a high performance team, a kind of team that attracts and retains top talent. All right. So responsibility lies above. When it comes to high impact leadership, I believe the leader above is always responsible for what's happening below. I know it's true. Whether they know it or not, whether they accept responsibility or not, they're still responsible. Whether they want to cast blame or not, they're still responsible. They can blame everybody else as much as they want to. They're still responsible. That's what leadership is. With high impact leadership, responsibility lies above until you get all the way to the top. Then it lies within. And it always relies within if you're a high impact individual. But I'm really talking in the context of leadership here. What's going on below in an organization, responsibility for that always lies above. Till you get to the very top leader, and then it lies within. They know where else to go. That old saying, the buck stops here, so to speak, from a leadership standpoint. We're all responsible for who we are and how we do what we do. But I'm talking this episode is in the context of formal authority leadership. Someone is in a leadership position. So this is what it sounds like and feels like with high impact leadership. I am responsible. I'm going to give you a little bulleted list from the newsletter. It's what it means to be a high impact leader. You say these things. I am responsible. Repeat after me. You may have to do it 1,000 times. You start to cast blame out the window or down the org chart. Hit your pause button. Look in the mirror and say, I am responsible. And if you don't know what that means, I got some more questions for you. Why are you looking in that mirror, trying to figure out how am I responsible, right? So you say, what am I not doing that I should be doing? I am responsible. What did I do that I shouldn't have done? I am responsible. What could I have done that I didn't do? I am responsible. How could I have prevented this? I'm responsible. How could I have prepared myself better? I'm responsible. How about this one? How could I have prepared my team better? I'm responsible. What role did I play in this outcome? I'm responsible. And this one to wrap up is pretty powerful. How can I become a better leader of my team? I'm responsible. I'm responsible for me and my team. Go to bluecollarleadership.com. Dive into all of our content. If you want us to come out, reach out. Check out the live training underneath that button, about the training button at bluecollarleadership.com. We'll come out. We'll help you. Figure it out. You know why? You got to figure it out because you're responsible. Just like if I was in your shoes in your organization, regardless of what team you have, you may have inherited the team. You may have been hired from the outside, or you might have been moved from one department to the next, and you didn't build the team, you inherited them. That's okay. This is what you say. I'm responsible. It doesn't matter. I'm responsible. When a new Navy captain gets given command of a ship, he don't get to bring his whole. If a ship's got 300 people on it, sailors, he don't get to bring 300 sailors. He inherits the team, and then he steps aboard. And if he's a good high impact leader, he says, "I'm responsible." That's how it works. Common sense isn't always common practice. You got to know that when it comes to leadership. You probably already know that. Regardless what level you're at, you could be an entry-level frontline worker, 18 years old. You know what I just said. Common sense isn't always common practice. But let's talk about it relative to leadership. It's what this podcast episode's about. Think about it. If the leaders above actually knew how to lead well, the leaders below them wouldn't be struggling to lead. They would actually be leading themselves and their teams well. If leaders at any level aren't leading well, they need leadership development. This is beyond obvious to anyone at any level, in any organization, in any industry. Everybody knows that. You know why? It's common sense. That's what high impact leaders do. They develop themselves with the intention of developing others, who then become capable of developing themselves and developing others. But it's not common practice, because leaders who aren't developing themselves with the intention of developing others don't know what they don't know. If they did know, they'd be doing it. But they don't know, so they don't do it. What do those leaders do who don't know that they're responsible? They cast blame and dodge responsibility. They moan, groan, whine up and down the org chart, left and right, everywhere they can get somebody to listen. That's what they do. Sometimes the whole org chart is filled with these leaders. Instead of going into a meeting, closing the door and saying, "We're responsible." Everybody in the room is looking in their own mirror saying, "I'm responsible. I'm responsible. I'm responsible." No, they go in there, close the door, and cast blame. I've been in the room. I know what happens in those rooms. I've been in them many, many times while I was consulting, and also many times when I was in a management position within a company. But that's what they do. These leaders who don't know. Doesn't mean they're bad people. It 100% absolutely means they're bad leaders. But that's exactly what they do. If any are reading my newsletter or read my newsletter, when they got to this point in the newsletter, they probably stopped reading the newsletter. If any of those are listening right now, I may have already lost them. It's okay. They were already lost and they don't want to be found. You with me? But if any were listening right now, they'll actually, and they're still listening. Maybe some of those didn't actually hit the stop button, but they still listening. They just want to know what I got to say about them, so to speak. If any of them are still listening, they'll actually be blaming me for speaking the truth. That's what I'm doing in this episode. I'm speaking some leadership truth. Remember, leadership truth is kind of like a surgeon's scalpel. Might hurt, might sting, but it's meant to help. But that's simply who they are and what they do. They blame people. Those kind of leaders, when I see them, I meet them in organizations. They're the kind that after we get done speaking or when we take a break, they go out in the hallway and they start moaning, groaning, and blaming and bashing us for being there, bashing their leaders for bringing us in there. That's just what they do. That's who they are. It's okay. We're going to help the world be a better place in spite of those people. But those people I'm talking about, those leaders, their team already knows those leaders are quick to cast blame and quick to dodge responsibility. Unfortunately, though, nothing will change until their leader chooses to look in the mirror, take the blame, and accept responsibility. For most undeveloped leaders, that's a wide gap to cross. So some of them can't cross that gap right there. They just ain't got the character. They're too insecure. They're too threatened by people who actually lead well. Those leaders will be running around blaming, moaning and groaning, whining and bashing the actual high impact leaders. That's why I say a lot of times when Rhea and I come in and talk about high impact leadership, we already know because we know people. Some of them going to go out and bash us. That's okay. Doesn't matter. We're going to do it. We're going to help make the world a better place in spite of those people. So getting ready to wind down, and I do want to say if you I got a good podcast. If you're a regular listener, you may have heard of it already. I mean, you may have heard it, but it's episode 309. It's kind of what I've been talking about in this episode, but different. So episode 309 is titled "The Greatest Obstacles to Cultural Transformation." And you need to check that out. Go listen to it, 309. I'll tell you the obstacles real quick, but in there I'm actually talking about it, much deeper. But in order from the greatest obstacles to least obstacle, relative to cultural transformation, number one is the top leader. They're the greatest obstacle. Number two is upper level management. They're the next greatest obstacle. Number three is mid-level management. Those leaders in the middle, they're the third greatest obstacle. And then the fourth greatest obstacle is frontline entry-level leaders. They're the least. And then what we didn't hear me say is the frontline entry-level workforce. They're waiting on somebody to show up above and make something happen, transform this organization, make it a place worth working, become leaders worth following. So you may want to go check that out, episode 309. As we wrap up here, though, I got a quote from a good friend of mine, Amir Ganad. He had this to say right here. Powerful. He's speaking some leadership truth in this quote that I'm sharing from him. The single most profound lesson I've learned is that leaders must be willing to declare themselves the primary obstacle to progress. It's not about ignoring real external challenges. It's about owning your role in either having created, contributed to, or tolerated them. This doesn't mean that every problem in the organization is your fault, but it does mean that solving them is now your responsibility. That's a phenomenal quote from Amir. It's a great quote to close this episode on. If you're a formal authority leader, you need to learn how to say this right here. I'm responsible. And then figure out how, and then do something about it. That's what high impact leaders do. They do it at home. They do it at work. Again, I'm going to ask you one more time. If you value this episode, if you still listening, there's people need to hear this episode. Please copy the link wherever you got. Share it on your social media. Help me help the world become a better place. Share it with some leaders in your organization. If you're a formal authority leader, get your leaders together. I know this is a longer episode than most of my episodes when I'm speaking. This would get me fired up. But you can break it into sections. You don't have to listen to it all the same day. Listen to 10 or 15 minutes, wherever you can find a good stopping point, and then discuss it for 10 or 15 minutes. So you have like a 30-minute meeting. Come back, do it again a couple of days or next week. Pick up where you left off. Go through it. Same thing. You can do that with any of my podcast episodes. But let me warn you, that requires you to lead. That's leadership truth. What I just described is actually high-impact leadership. That is leading and developing people. Most leaders ain't going to do it. They ain't got the courage to do it. They ain't got the character to do it. But I hope if you're still listening, you actually do. Get the book and do a book study. The book I'm talking about, Blue Collar Leadership, Blue Collar Leadership and Supervision, leading from the front lines. You go to bluecollarleadership.com/book study training. I teach you how to do it, but that means you got to lead. Managers of people don't want to lead and develop people. They want to manage people. Stuff I'm talking about, High impact leadership. It ain't for the weak, it's for the strong. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hope you share it with folks. Tell somebody about it. Tell them go listen to 466 and tell them buckle the seatbelt. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership Series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.